I do not want to interrupt those. But I'd like us to get started in a few minutes. So if we could all take our seats, so that we right. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know a lot of people have had challenges getting here because a combination of rain and a Friday and a holiday Friday, long weekend Friday, in any country, by the way, usually leads to gridlock on the roads. So thank you, those of you who. And so we do want to get the discussion going right away. So let me just start by introducing myself. My name is William Asiko. I am from Kenya, despite my looks. Everybody thinks I'm Nigerian, which I kind of love. You know, I always feel alive when I come to this country. From the airport, everybody wants to, welcome me in a special way. And it is fantastic. And, the thing is, today's discussion is about a book, and we'll talk about that in a little while, called Big Bets. And Big Bets is simply about transformation, making transformative change in society. And it's actually a book written by Dr. Rajiv Shah that we will meet in a few minutes about how to make significant transformation in people's lives. This is the first stop of the book tour. There's significant part of last year and this year has been devoted to this book tour in North America. And this is the first stop of the book tour in Africa. And just so that you know, Raj, I know that all the Nigerians in the room know this, but you might not know that it is poignant that it is here in Lagos, in Nigeria, a country that has transformed the cultural and entertainment industry, I think, in the world. If you live in Africa today and you want to listen to, there's a genre of music on Spotify. Go check it out. It's called Afrobeats. Afrobeats is Nigerian. There's a genre on Netflix called Niger. It's Nigerian. So this country has transformed culture and entertainment on the continent, and I think it's going to be in the world. The question today is, how do we do the same with development? And again, Nigeria is going to be significant in that, as you will hear during the discussion. So my role is simple, is to moderate today's session. I want to say thank you to our co-hosts today, the Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria, the Lagos Business School, which has been very significant in hosting this event, and the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, which, again, bringing together some really important people to a conversation that is about transformation. So today's event is going to be short and sweet. We want to give as much time to the discussion between Ndidi and Raj, whom I will introduce in a moment, although they need no introduction. And then we will have a short Q&A if we have time. Like I said, we do need to break by 7 because a number of people have said they have got flights to catch at that time in order to get to the airport. So without much further ado, I will call, let's get her name right, I don't want to mispronounce it, Florence Okoli, who is the Vice President of the Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria, to give us some welcoming remarks and invite us all to this event. Florence, please come and take the stage.
Thank you, William. And we're ever ready to welcome you to Nigeria when you're ready. So good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this very important event. My name is Florence, Vice President of Harvard Business School. The Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria is a non-profit organization, and it was formed by HBS alumni over 40 years ago to build and lead organizations that will create transformational impact in Nigeria and beyond. So the key word again is transformation. Over the years, HBSAN has continued to foster activities and initiatives aimed at nation building and in line with our mission, the mission of Harvard Business School, to make a difference. So it's in the light of this, and this is really focused on leadership excellence. In the light of this event is a collaboration with 4 organizations, or amongst 4 organizations: HBSAN, the Rockefeller Foundation, NESG, as well as Lagos Business School. So we are hoping that this is a start of future collaboration amongst these organizations as well as other organizations. And we are delighted to welcome first our special guest of honor, Dr. Rajiv Shah, the president of the Rockefeller Foundation, as well as Mrs. Ndidi Wuneli, a CEO of Rockefeller, as well as the president of the One campaign. And they do have something in common with Harvard as well. I'll leave Raj to tell you what his relationship with Harvard is, but we all know Ndidi is one of us as well. I also welcome everyone here. I recognize the presence of very eminent personalities here, but because we are short for time, we'll just move on. I am sure we're all eager to listen to what our special guests have to say, especially Dr. Rajiv Shah, and we're all expectant this evening. So I will not take up too much of your time, but I enjoin you all to enjoy this evening, and on the back end of the conversation, we'll come back with closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being brief. So our next speaker is going to be Dr. Tayo Aduloju, who is the CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, to also as a co-sponsor of this to come and just say a few words of welcome to all of us. Please come and take the stage. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. You were discussing all the reasons we got here a little bit late. I got stuck in the presidential convoy moving, so I had to all our Friday blues. But Dr. Raj Shah, you're welcome. The gift of this book to this generation is a profound inspiration. One, because of the story tells about a young man and the age at which the young man dares almost feats that are considered impossible. And the bold idea of the book, I think, to the formidable problems of our time. A young person called me and said, why are you asking us to come for this event? So I said, because not only the author, but the book represents a bold idea. And that bold idea, that strategic bets on the big formidable challenges of our time can truly be met and outmatched by not just a commitment to act, but to act in collaborative ways across local and global networks, and to do it in such a way that we do not just have the short run wins, the easy things, but we get the difficult work done. It's such, I've listened to the book 4 times, so I have questions, but I think the most inspirational part of it is it's just an immense gift. It's paradigm shifting, it's inspiring, it's daring. And for a country like Nigeria, with many firsts, Afrobeat and the rest, but with many firsts to come in meeting the formidable problems of development of our time and the bold future we have. We are in a demographic transition. Nigeria will be younger for longer. So this book is a gift to a younger generation that must think bold new dreams and shaping the future. And it's a book to us in the room that must acquire missions, frontier missions to do the impossible, not tomorrow, but right now. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. And again, this is just testimony to Nigeria's leadership and in how brief and succinct people are, but they can still deliver the message with a lot of passion. So I think we're now coming to the stage where we are going to have what is nowadays known as a fireside chat. Usually there are no fires, but it essentially means that it's a conversation between one or more people, and then it's supposed to be casual, but also allow people to be free and speak in a way that is passionate and comes from the heart. And so we hope that that's the conversation we're going to have today. I know that's what we're going to have because I know that Raj and Didi, have that kind of relationship, but they also like speaking like that. But we also ask that, if you do have questions, please, we want to hear them. Raj wants to hear them and he wants to answer them. He wants to have a conversation. So Fireside Chat is another name for a conversation. Didi is no one that needs any introduction to this group. And if you Google her, these days you judge your importance by how many Google hits you get, And I Googled Didi today and there were like 20. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to read all of this stuff. But Didi is our board member. And so in a sense, my boss. But she's also a good friend. And then she's also passionate about Africa's development. And, we have side conversations about what should be the priorities in Africa. I think what I decided to do with my time about introductions is to tell you something that you might not know about these two individuals who are coming, because everything else now you can literally get on Google. Now, Didi, I don't know if many people know this, but when I say it, I think many people will realize why. Didi has been very passionate about how Africa is portrayed in the world and to the world. And she is very concerned about, when you see images of Africa that demonstrate what she knows is not are not the facts. And I think she herself, in her own right, has caused things to change, and on a number of numerous international boards that she's on, including RF and AGRA, has changed how that image is presented to the world. And it's really important because we as Africans, we need to see ourselves as important people. We know that is not the image that should be out there. So, that you're not going to find that anywhere in the internet, I think, and Didi, but that's one thing I will say. For Raj, I'll just say this. Raj is passionate about art. And guess what? He really loves Nigerian art. So I don't think you're going to find that anywhere on the internet as well. But hopefully, the fact that he's here, he's been to at least one, maybe more galleries already. He would leave this country with something. So I please invite both of you, give them a clap as they come up for what I'm sure will be an enthralling discussion. And then, once they're done, we will have a little time for questions. So Ndidi, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. And thank you to Dr. Raj Shah for coming to Lagos. And thank you to this amazing audience. Thank you to NESG. Thank you to my sister Flo, my brother Tayo, to Prof. Uzo from LBS, and to all of our distinguished guests. I know so many people wanted to be in this room. I was getting emails and messages like, I'm on the wait list. So now I'm telling people, please come. I know Lagos is tough, but we had about, 100 people on a waiting list. So hopefully we'll be able to really enjoy all that Raj has to share. I think this is really special. The last time I saw Raj in Lagos, he was the head of USAID. He assumed this role at only 36 years old, the youngest ever administrator in the history of USAID. And at that time, he had a budget of $30 billion. So you can imagine my pride as I told everybody, I know him. And in fact, he was walking in a lineup with the whole US government entourage, and he stepped out of the lineup to give Mezo and I a hug. And I wouldn't mention the Nigerian billionaire who said, how does he know them? So I am just have to say that it's truly an honor and privilege to have you, Raj. Raj is a friend, a sponsor, a role model to me, and he's really held my hand and walked my journey with me. I met him through his wife, who went to HBS, Shivam Malik Shah, who is a phenomenal woman. And I actually was a bridesmaid in their wedding. So you would not know, but so our relationship is quite deep. But beyond that, in my career, he served as a mentor and a sponsor and a champion, and his wisdom is beyond his years. And so I think we have a lot to learn from him this evening, and it's really a privilege to be here. And I want to thank the Rockefeller team who have worked so hard to put this together. Please give them a round of applause. The Rockefeller Foundation has brilliant and bold people who are visionary and have decided to camp with a visionary leader. And I think they will attest to the fact that every day in the foundation is a new challenge and a new opportunity. So Raj, thank you. Thank you for coming. So we're going to delve into the book, and then we'll take this on a number of paths. And first, big bets. Dr. Tayo talked so much about this book, and I have read the book, and my sister actually called me and gave me a summary before I even read it. So I felt like I had read it. And it's your first book, first of many, I can assume. Why did you write Big Bets?
Well, indeed, first, can I just say thank you to you and to Mezu and to Amara for having us here. It's nice of you to say all those really kind things about Shivam and I, but you can all imagine, everyone who knows Ndidi knows she is a life force, a positive life force. And one of the great blessings in our lives was to get to know you so early as we were just taking off. So thank you for having us here. And thank you all for being here. It's such a treat to be with so many distinguished leaders here in Lagos. And I love Nigeria. I have missed the fact that I haven't been here in a while. So I look forward to this. You know, I wrote the book with my colleagues because I just find when we look at the world we confront today and we see a planet heating up beyond imagination, we see billions of people living still in a condition of either poverty or real lack of access to dignity and opportunity the way the rest of us get to imagine our own futures and our kids' futures. And we see the fragmented politics of populist political campaigns. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that we can solve the biggest challenges we face, whether it's climate, poverty, health, pandemics. And I feel like I got lucky early in my career, and I got to see some extraordinary leaders, from women leaders who created NGOs that did transformational things in West Africa, including Ndidi and others, to presidents like Barack Obama and others, to private sector leaders like Bill and Melinda Gates. And when I saw how they thought about solving these problems, it wasn't this passive, let's do a little bit of charitable work because charity makes us feel good. It was disciplined thinking around how do we actually solve the biggest problems we face. And so, you know, the book starts with some personal narrative, but quickly kind of evolves into how Bill and Melinda made a big bet to transform vaccination access around the world. And they didn't actually accomplish it, but with leaders like Mohammed Pate and so many others that held hands with us over 20 years, we all collectively vaccinated 1 billion children and saved 16 million child lives in a transformation of human health that has rarely been seen in recent decades. And it goes on to talk about when I was at USAID and worked to fight the Ebola crisis in West Africa, for example. You'll remember the CDC was estimating 1.6 million cases and hundreds of thousands of deaths, including in the United States. That's what everybody expected would be the baseline. Instead, thanks to concerted action, mostly by women community health workers in West Africa who poured in and got trained and took risks, there were 30,000 deaths, 11,000 deaths, 30,000 total cases. And as an American, only 2 cases in the United States and no transmission in our home country. And it goes on to talk about what we're doing today at the Rockefeller Foundation, including trying to reinvigorate access to energy and electricity using the renewable energy technology frontier to once and for all reach the more than 1 billion people who live without any meaningful electricity access and therefore are just trapped in an unproductive and poverty. Especially here in Nigeria, transition people off of gensets that are incredibly expensive and represent the main constraint to growth. So these are big bets we can achieve together, and I feel like I've learned a little about the methodology of how to execute these and wanted to share those learnings with others who had that same aspiration.
Thank you. And we reflect on Nigeria. You've spent, 48 hours here with your team?
Feels longer.
I know.
In a good way.
You're coming at a time where people are feeling a bit despondent about the state of affairs, the economy, the state of healthcare, education. Some of these issues you have tackled in this book. And, I remember one night I actually came to visit you guys in DC, and I just saw you on television. Before I came, I was talking about the Haiti crisis. Haiti is a country that has had its share of problems, and you were able to galvanize private-public partnerships very quickly during the aftermath of the earthquakes in Haiti. I'm not saying that Nigeria is at the stage Haiti is yet, and we don't ever want to be there, but can you give us kind of some examples of that big bet and how you were able to quickly mobilize? And then some of the mindsets you've laid out in the book. The mindsets required where people are feeling like, I'm tired. Can we really make it? Those mindsets were required then, and you've basically had that mindset with every big bet you've taken. So can you just kind of infuse them? Because we want people to leave here energized and hopeful that they can take big bets as well.
Well, look, with the Haiti example, I would just say the thing I learned leading the global response to the Haiti earthquake was that crisis is an opportunity, and you have to adjust your mindset to embrace crisis as an opportunity. And I'll speak to Haiti in just a moment, but I've spent the last 2 days on efforts to mobilize resources for renewable energy technology here in Nigeria to reach underserved communities. And yes, there's an employment crisis with 30+% unemployment. It's extraordinary in Nigeria, the 3.5 million new workforce entrants every single year in an economy that's not creating the jobs they need. And I frankly thought the U.S. election is overwhelmed by a cost of living crisis in the United States, and that's nothing compared to what you're dealing with here, including with the inflation and fuel and diesel prices. So the reality is, we are in Nigeria an economic crisis of sorts, and I think this crisis can actually nurture some of the solutions you need. It can force an acceleration of a transition to renewables that's tied to training, thousands of young women to be the engineers of a future renewable economy, 4 of which I met yesterday at the University of Abuja, and it was just so uplifting. It can help shop owners across the continent and across the country for sure really transform their economics by switching to renewable electrification, getting rid of super expensive, noisy, dirty, and unproductive diesel, making that switch, and then benefiting over the long run from better, household and business economics for years and years and years. So it's a transition that's going to be tough, but crisis is an opportunity. And I learned that the hard way when I had to lead the Haiti earthquake. I'll tell you 2 stories about the start, because a lot of the book, I didn't realize this when I wrote it. I didn't intend for this to happen. But have you heard of the phrase imposter syndrome? Yes. So a lot of the book ends up being about imposter syndrome, unknowingly to me. And one example was I was 36 when I started at USAID, which was fairly young. But even more than my age, I'd only been in Washington for a few months. And I wasn't like a creature of the Washington political environment. And so when the Haiti earthquake happened, in an instant, 250,000 people lost their lives. 21 of 22 government ministries, the buildings actually physically collapsed into rubble, including the building that housed the United Nations and the leadership of the UN Security Force at the time called MINUSTA. So we had to step in and respond. And I had been 7 days into my job, about 6 days into my job. And I didn't have any of my political appointees yet at USAID. So it was just me and the civil service staff. And then one of my colleagues, a young man named Nishant Roy, who was my kind of assistant. And Nishant came to me as I was getting out of the elevator and said, "We just got a call from the White House and the president wants to speak to you." This was right after the earthquake happened. And I thought, oh my gosh, never gotten a call from the president before. So I got nervous, got excited, nervous, all that. And I looked at my BlackBerry. You remember BlackBerries? And I had like one bar. And for those of you that have been, indeed, he has been in the Ronald Reagan building in Washington, D.C., you know, it's these huge cinder block walls. And I was like, the president's going to call my BlackBerry and I'm going to not have a connection. So I pulled a desk up to a window. Nishant and I propped the phone up on the desk. We could put a little, you plug in you remember the earpiece that would go in through the plug? And we sat there and waited like 20 minutes. And the call came and it was the White House. And they're like, "President Obama wants to speak to you." I'm like, "Great." And he says, "Raj, you know, this is a real tragedy in Haiti. And I want you to lead a global response, including across the U.S. military and civilian capabilities. And, you know, I want you to make us proud." And I said, "Absolutely, ready to do it." And then I had my notepad out because I was at this little makeshift desk and the line went dead. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just hung up. But I looked down, I had 3 bars. And then about 60 seconds later on CNN, on television behind me, President Obama walks up to the podium and he says, "I just spoke to Administrator Shah. I asked him to deploy the U.S. Coast Guard, send, you know, aircraft, deploy our urban search and rescue. We're going to do all." And I said, he didn't tell me any of that stuff. But I was like, if this is how it's going to work, this is how it's going to work. The next day I go in the morning, or up all night, most extraordinary night because, you know, everybody was calling from at USAID. I had staff calling from Afghanistan, from Peru, from all over the world. And they basically all said the same thing. They said, "Raj, you don't know me, but I've been here a lot longer than you. And I'm the best person at water and sanitation in a crisis. And you need me. So I'm going to get on a plane and come to help." Or, "You don't know me, but I just led an earthquake response in Lima, Peru. And I'm still here, but I'm going to get on a plane and I'll be there to help." And what I saw was, you know how people talk about federal workers sometimes as government workers as not having the passion and the excellence? Blew through all that. In 10 minutes, I saw the commitment and the passion these folks had. And we did end up mounting the largest response to any humanitarian crisis at the time. 25,000 surgeries, including limb reattachments from deploying our hospital ship, the USS Comfort. In 3 days, we had stood up with the World Food Program, a feeding program that ultimately reached about 3 million people on a daily basis, provided so much support to women and girls because the security forces had been decimated through the crisis, and we deployed 3,000 American troops and ran a real civ-mil cooperative response. And 6 months after the earthquake, the rate of diarrheal disease in Port-au-Prince was lower than the day before the earthquake because we had been able to distribute so much clean water and provide that sort of access. Now, unfortunately, none of that really sustained given Haiti and governance issues, but I was proud of that response. I know I'm going on. I won't make all my answers this long, but I do want you to hear one thing about imposter syndrome. So the next morning after that phone call, I walked into the Oval Office. And there was a briefing with the president and the vice president. And I got there a little bit early, like 2 minutes early. So you put your BlackBerry away and you kind of walk in and they let me in. And the president and vice president were over by the desk in the window with Obama looking out the window, no, with Biden looking out the window and Obama looking towards the door. So he sees me walk in, and as I walk in, I hear Joe Biden saying loudly, like right in front of President Obama, he's like, "Are you sure about this Raj Shah guy? He's like 30-something. He just got here. We have this other guy, Craig Fugate, who runs Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's so much more experienced." And Obama didn't respond because he saw me walk in. He's like, Raj, come in, sit down. And the whole meeting, I was thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And we had a very productive meeting. And walking out of the meeting, I grabbed Craig Fugate, who was the FEMA guy, and I said, Craig, I need your help. And Craig spent the next 3 weeks, every single night, almost every night, with me in our emergency operations center. There's no way I could have run that response without his leadership. And what I learned from that experience was just take all the help you can get. You know, people want to help. They care about this mission. They want to be part of doing the right thing. Take all the help you can get, whether it's the folks calling from Afghanistan and saying, I'll be there tomorrow, or Craig saying, I'll put aside my own job and basically do yours for 3 weeks. That's my lesson learned.
Awesome. You know, the backstory that you wouldn't hear is that when you work for the U.S. government, in the U.S., you don't have a car and driver. You don't
Or a
have
house.
or a house. You don't have a slew of help. And one night, the night I was seeing him on CNN, he had to look for parking for 30 minutes to get home, and then they had to take care of their kids. They have 3 beautiful kids. Put dinner on the table. And this is in addition to everything else. It's funny because I just came in from London this morning for this session with Raj. That's how much I love Raj. But somebody was telling me, you mean you don't have a car and driver in Washington? You mean you are doing all this stuff and still getting? And I'm like, that's why this is nothing short of heroic, right? That you're pulling this off as a normal citizen, as a servant of the nation, essentially. And we honor you for that. And Raj, then at the USAID, people would say, who is this guy? He's an intern. You know, they brought an intern to run USAID, and he proved them wrong by delivering excellence and taking big bets and partnering. Raj, you've also done a lot with the private sector. In this room, we have mostly private sector people who care deeply about governance, right? But feel like, I think I prefer to stick in the private sector, but still change the system. And with your current big bets on energy and climate, you're partnering with the private sector. Can you talk a bit about that vision, that bet, and how the perspectives need to change from both sides to build trust, shared values, and some of the other big bet ideologies that are critical?
Well, indeed, he does this every day because you got to build coalitions to be successful. But when we actually, this all started as President Obama was entering his second term, and he said, you know, we're doing a lot of good work on health, on hunger, on humanitarian response. But whenever I visit with leaders, they're talking about energy infrastructure and how we provide electricity and can we build roads and, you know, how do we restart genuine large-scale economic development. And so we did a review of 70 countries, and we found almost every country, the number one constraint to growth was energy access, the price of energy, and the reliability of energy. And people think energy access is just, oh, you have it or you don't. That's not true. It has a price associated with it. If you have it in an erratic way for a few hours a day, maybe, that you can't really make investment planning decisions based on that. If you run a business, I imagine many of you run actual institutions and you have to think that through. So at the time we started Power Africa with the help of some of you in this room. And we realized that this mission would have to be fundamentally public-private. So when I joined at Rockefeller, we had a small program in northern India that was using solar mini grids, solar installations tied to small battery systems with some backup diesel, providing connections into local villages, anchoring loads on a customer that was usually a cell phone tower, you know, provide power to one cell phone tower as backup and then service the others, other community members. And what we learned was it was extremely costly. It would cost more than $1 per kilowatt hour to provide power that way, because this was early days. But over time, they just got better and better. They innovated. They brought artificial intelligence management of energy and battery management in. The cost of solar and battery went way down. Lithium ion transformed the underlying cost structure. These smart meters, the technology that initially came out of the U.S., now it's all over, allowed for sort of smart metering at the connection level, mobile phone-based payment, increased collection rates. And all of a sudden, 8 years later, they're providing power at 20 cents a kilowatt hour, getting 97+% repayment. Most of the customers were small and medium. Most of the customers that grew their demand were small and medium enterprises, often led by women, a little sewing shop that would switch to, electric sewing machines, and girls would study at night with lit classrooms. And this started to become transformational. So we reached out to find who are the private sector partners that can help take this to scale. In India, it was Tata Power, massive company, as you know. They committed to building 10,000 of these to reach 25 million people. That effort has grown into a whole effort now to provide electrification almost 270 million people in India, including through solar rooftop systems. So farmers have a second source of income and a cheap source of reliable power. In Africa, that effort has expanded through this global energy alliance for people and planet that we've built to bring together the public and private sector. And I spend most of my time today with your colleagues in the financial services industry or the renewable energy developers, figuring out how can we use our philanthropic capital in a really catalytic way to unlock serious local currency financing for dozens of developers. And we have partners like All On and Sustainable Energy for All here in the room doing incredible work to do that. But it's those public-private partnerships. And the one thing I've learned year after year after year, and Didi, I'm sure you now have to carry this mantle forward for the One campaign because growth, development, poverty reduction isn't going to come from public investment alone, although that's critical. The one thing I've learned is even today, it's hard to have a real dialogue that is trust-based and deeply engaging with private sector and public sector. And when I was in government, I would go visit the CEOs of food and agriculture companies because we were launching a program called Feed the Future. And, sometimes it was worthwhile and sometimes it wasn't, but it built relationships so that when the crisis came, I could call the CEO of Cargill and say, can you donate 6 million metric tons of rice in Mogadishu to prevent a famine in Somalia, which he did. But he only did because we had that relationship and you could make that call. And so, even today, as I look at this dynamic improving, the more you have great developers connecting with great financial sector leaders, connecting with government officials, it's that alliance, not the individual actions, that's the magic. And the reason I'm so optimistic about Nigeria, honestly, Damilola Agumbe is here. I'm sure you all know her from Sustainable Energy for All. But when you walk into a room, folks know each other. They're joking around with each other. They're making fun of each other. They're teasing each other. Like, that's what you need across public and private. So my old thinking used to be, we need private sector windows and we need all these mechanisms to connect public and private, which is still true. But what I've learned over time, whether it's Feed the Future and now our energy program, some of our disaster response, is it's when people form real relationships and they start seeing themselves winning because helping each other out in that room is more important than helping your boss out at the World Bank. It's when you make that pivot, that's when magic starts to happen. And magic is possible. That's what a big bet is. It's saying we can actually solve energy access at scale. And we're on path. We're on path. The reason I'm here is there's a big new program called Mission 300 to reach 300 million people in Africa with $30 billion of public sector investment from the African Development Bank and the World Bank. For them to succeed, you will need another 40 to 60 billion in private capital in addition to that. And if we can build this alliance and make it work, it will transform human development outcomes on this continent, and it'll transform economic opportunities for women entrepreneurs. And we should use this crisis to make that happen.
Fantastic. I love the bold vision. And I'm sure there are folks here who are excited about getting involved. The last question before I open it up, because we want to hear from the audience. Rockefeller Foundation just celebrated 111 years. I went to the dinner, and I'm always inspired by the story of the Rockefeller Foundation. I think philanthropists who make a decision to leave a legacy, to leave behind just their wealth, but sustained impact is truly revolutionary. And I've been trying to support the philanthropy landscape in Africa through the Africa Philanthropy Forum, which Mosula runs, and then most recently through Wealth for Impact, which Emmett Essien and I started. And what we've seen is that a lot of us in this room want to be like the Rockefellers of the world, right? We want to build sustainable wealth and drive impact. Can you tell us a bit from your lens why it's so important for us to think through a philanthropic mindset as we build wealth, and what we can learn from Rockefeller and some of the catalytic pathways that having this endowment allows you to do, and in partnership with others?
Well, I love that question, and I love it because what Rockefeller did that was different were actually two things. The first was at a time when there was no income tax in America, so no income tax deduction to benefit from. He donated as much as 1.5% to 2% of American GDP into a single endowment. At the time, American federal government was not involved in creating a floor for those who suffer in our country, in the United States. So he offered the foundation to the U.S. Congress, and he said the vice president, who still didn't have anything to do back then, he said the vice president should be the chair of this foundation, and the government should have a role in ensuring that everybody has opportunity, not just the wealthy. And at the time, in the infinite wisdom of the U.S. Congress, which apparently has not gotten that much wiser, they turned it down because it was controversial as a kind of monopoly owning financial leader and capitalist. So, but anyway, I say that because the giving was one part. The other part was the mindset. And I call the mindset big bets, but it's only because John D. Rockefeller's words didn't fit on the cover. He called it scientific philanthropy. And at the time, he thought his oil industry was being transformed by science. And he said, well, why can't science lift up everybody instead of just those in particular capitalist environments? So he had this back and forth, a set of letters with his advisor to say, where could science have the biggest impact on improving the human condition at scale? And they settled on two areas: medicine, which at the time was not a scientific field. It was people selling things off the back of pickup trucks, but very little science involved. And agriculture, which for 40 years earlier had been a scientific field, with the land-grant university system in the United States being created out of the Civil War. And those two things led to the modernization of science-based public health at home and around the world, the eradication of hookworm, a Nobel Prize for the invention of the yellow fever vaccine, and it led to the Green Revolution and the Nobel Peace Prize for that. So that mindset of how do you actually think about transforming things at scale, to me, is just as important as the resource you can provide. So those of you in this room, if you're a financial sector genius, use that genius to figure out how this country can somehow acquire 5-10 million battery and solar systems and get them to all the people that run small shops in this nation based on diesel generators. Use your special gift that helped you build the wealth to actually solve the problems we face. And when you do that, the contribution is not just your wealth, but it's your intellect, it's your relationships, it's you being all in. And that's one thing that keeps me totally inspired about this work, is you get to connect with some people who are really extraordinary thinkers. And we need that extraordinary thinking to actually solve the big problems we face.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the big bets that you've taken and that the Rockefeller team has taken. I see some people already eager to, so we'll take 3 questions at a time, and then Raj will answer. Please introduce yourself briefly and try to keep your question brief as well. We love to talk in Nigeria. So one over there, and then Pearl, and then the lady in front of Pearl. Okay, go ahead.
You have to hold the button down.
Good evening, Raj. Thank you so much. Akimbo, Akionobade. My
What do
question
you
is,
do? Sorry.
oh, my apologies. I run a company that supply chain and procurement for the infrastructure and construction industries primarily. My question is about power. The cost of power in the US is roughly, 14, 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And the cost of power in Nigeria is now 266 naira, which is about 17 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, the average income in the US today, I think, is $35,000-ish. The average income in Nigeria is $2,000. And that was before the devaluation. No, dollars. The problem is we're earning less than a tenth of what the US earns, but we're expected to pay slightly more for power. There's the disconnect.
Yeah.
And if you then add that the average per capita power usage in Nigeria is literally 10 kilowatt hours a month on average, when in America it is 100 times more. It's 1,000 kilowatt hours per month, per month, 12,000 a year.
Per person.
So yeah, per person.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do we develop, knowing that power is what we need to develop, and we can't afford the power is not there for us. It's not available. There's a big disconnect.
Yeah, I love that question, and it's a great question. And can I just say, I think you even underestimate the question itself, because the cost of power might be 17 cents on the grid, but the grid is providing maybe 20% of the total energy consumed for productive purposes in this country. Most of the energy consumed is produced by diesel generators. And you tell me what the cost of diesel is per kilowatt hour, but it's no way that it's 17 cents. It's probably 50 cents. Would double? Yeah. Well, and I would say if you look in the communities we were just in, which are obviously not people represented in this room, for them it's even higher. So, I mean, our estimates are 50, 60 cents a kilowatt hour is not an unreasonable price point for most diesel generator based power, especially for smaller businesses. So you're right. That is a constraint to growth and development. It's frankly, in a world that's becoming defined by a digital economy that consumes massive amounts of power, whether you as a nation can produce power for your people and its businesses at a low price point in a sustained way will define whether people in those countries have human opportunity, just full stop. And so that's why this has to be the priority. Now, our Mission 300 program, which is powered by the $30 billion of public finance from the World Bank and African Development Bank, it's so important because that's the financial resource that allows to develop plans and then implement plans, including what you're doing in Nigeria with these results-based subsidies for building out mini grids and solar-based installations, and even larger scale on-grid renewable electrification. But that is the only path forward. If you don't invest in an effective energy infrastructure, you cannot compete in a global economy, and the disparity is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I'll say two other things about that. One is, can you please help our partners, Olan and SE for All, because they are working to help improve procurement and supply chain. And if you're a small renewable energy developer in Nigeria, you're paying 30% more for solar panels than, if you're a larger company with different access to supply chain. And for lithium-ion batteries, it's even more extraordinarily outrageous, the price point differential. So if it sounds like you're a procurement specialist, and we could use your help. The second is, I hope emerging economies get on, like you did on the front of the mobile telephony revolution. The renewable energy revolution will include nuclear power, including fusion and fission. And there's going to be some huge opportunities in the micro hydro space, in new hydro areas. So I understand right now the grid really consumes, I think 80+% of grid power is gas. But over time, the ability to win in those new technology categories will really define the cost of power as a nation.
Thank you. I love the passion and the partnerships that are brewing already. I love the passion and the partnerships that are brewing already. So, sorry. I think it's on now. Thank you. All right. So we had two questions here. We'll take both of them at the same time. Pearl, go ahead.
My name is Pearl. Thank you. That helps. Hi. So my name is Pearl Uzokwe. I head Africa Forward at Catalyst 2030, which is essentially a gathering of social entrepreneurs and innovators, like you've spoken about, who are looking to solve the SDGs as soon as possible on the continent. I love the phrases that you've used in your book about building trust between diverse stakeholders, opening the turnstiles. Now, I want to pose a question to you, and it's a direct line from your book, not a trick question. And you talked about dealing with the Ebola crisis. and coming into Liberia. And basically there was a divergence in terms of the solutions that were proffered. And this line really struck me, where you said, this wasn't the stuff of high-end medical miracles. People in the rural villages where no one had ever heard of the CDC or US aid already knew how to handle outbreaks. And that was really powerful for me, because obviously what you went on to do was ensure that you centered that voice. Now, because I'm constantly having to do this as well with proximate leaders across the continent, I'd like to hear like 1 or 2 tips around how you ensure you center that voice, especially when they're competing, powerful voices. You understand the global north and the south divide. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because it speaks to something that's so hard to do as an institutional leader, which is create space in your leadership to listen to those you serve, as opposed to listening to the experts around you. And the example that you talked about with the Ebola crisis, when America deployed about 2,700 troops to West Africa for the first time in our history to fight a pandemic disease. First, everyone hadn't heard of pandemic diseases, right? It was pre-COVID. And second, we didn't actually know the best way to solve the problem. The CDC was advocating for these big Ebola treatment units, which for a lot of reasons, some of us felt were not going to work. And sure enough, they didn't work, because there was a 70% mortality rate. Anybody who caught COVID, if you went into an Ebola ETU, as they were called, you never came out, your things and possessions never came out, and your ashes never came out. And pretty soon, nobody went in. So our U.S. military was deployed to build all these big units that stood empty. And what did work came from a group called Global Communities, working with rural villagers, who said, you know what, when someone in Liberia passes, we wash the body, the girls wash the body, they redress the body, they hug and they kiss, and there's a ceremony, and that's how we show respect. And that was the main point of transmission. And so they sat with a local community health worker team, and they came up with a process where you could still show respect, but people in full clad equipment with body bags would come remove the body before you did all that. And we saw a 70% reduction in transmission. And I've thought so much about your question. And the only real answer, it's a technical one, is in the book during the Haiti chapter, during the Ebola chapter, and even today we have to do this for a meeting next week. You know, we use scorecards to measure progress of things. And I write in the book about having to sort of fight to shape the Ebola scorecard, to acknowledge that I couldn't overpower the CDC. They have all the authority in the world. And so the first line was, okay, you want to build Ebola treatment units, we'll track exactly how much capacity you're building on a day-to-day basis and report it to the president. But we put in a whole bunch of other line items for solutions we didn't know were working yet. And they were just local community solutions. And in addition to talking about the process indicators of are you achieving the coverage you want to achieve, we also correlated that with the impact you were actually having on reduced transmission. And so what President Obama started to see was, hey, we're building all these Ebola treatment units. It's doing nothing to reduce transmission. Why is that? Oh, no one's going in. He's like, what? No one's going in? What's working? And what was working with these Ebola, these burial teams, which all the experts said, oh, those are just community, these are untrained community workers doing this stuff. Who knows if it works, it doesn't work. We're like, we can see the data is showing us it works. And we scaled up to 70 teams in Liberia, and within weeks, Ebola was not an issue. And those, whatever young girls sat with those community health workers and developed that solution, they deserve PhDs in public health because they solved a crisis. And so all I can say is none of these big institutions will ever get this right. But if we have a discipline in how we keep score of creating the space to constantly experiment and ask questions and not assume the thing you're doing is the expert solution, we can do much better. The title of the chapter is called Keep Experimenting because we just needed to in order to win in that setting.
Great story, and kudos to Pearl for underlining the sentence. I think that's another book in itself that needs to be written because Maybe William will co-author it with Pearl, and Raj will do the forward. I think we constantly battle with this in our landscape. Who is the expert? Who has the answers?
Okay, but now we have a new strategy because
Yes.
the CEO of the One campaign is a Nigerian woman, and she can make this happen.
Amen. Amen. But the truth is I think that's a very, very, very important message. So thank you for your response, and thank you for seeing the people. I always tell people now, that's my new mantra. I tell them in my language, people, love means to see you. It means literally aforum gnaya ihun, to see you, and that we need to see each other in this world. Because if we actually see each other, we see the value that each other has to provide. That's been my mantra in the last 2 months. Thank you. All right, there's a lady behind you. I see a few people have their hands up. Go ahead.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself as well.
Of course. My name is Blessing Adesina, and I'm the founder and CEO of Care in Africa. I'm very excited about hearing all about energy and climate change because in my past life, I was a chemical engineer, worked with DuPont, BASF, and so on and so forth. But my question is actually a big part of your book, which is make it personal. And one of the big bets that I made was leaving, my corporate career in corporate America and saying, you know what, I want to make a big bet about care in Africa. And one of the things that really stood out to me was, just how we have really missed the opportunity on, the role that care actually plays in our economy and how care can actually catalyze economic growth. And I'm talking child care, obviously, aging care, climate care, which is so important, which women are on the receiving end of the impact of climate change. And so one of the questions that I want to ask you is, when you said make it personal in your book, I was like, because I did listen to one of your podcasts with David Rubenstein, which was exciting. I listened to that on my way here. And so when you say make it personal, and I've been thinking about that really strongly because we're all here because somebody's watching our kids. I have 4 kids, by the way. And care is vital to our economic growth because care is the work that makes other work possible. And so how do you make it personal for leaders that just don't understand? They don't see it. They don't get it. They don't understand how care actually catalyzes economic growth, how care is the economic engine for economic growth. How do you think we can make that possible to make it personal for them?
Well, first, I just want to say in the United States, because our foundation, the Rockefeller team, looked at this very carefully and did some work on it. Not only is the care economy a huge and growing part of the economy, by some estimates, it was the fastest growing part of the economy. But most of the service provision is informal and uncompensated. And almost all of that informal, uncompensated service provision in the fastest growing part of the United States economy is provided by women. And so, the reality is, I have a friend who created a company called care.org. I don't know if that helps in the US. And I'll say, I think she just bought a women's basketball team. So I am hopeful that you figure out a way to succeed. And, she deserves it and you deserve it. Now, I will say in the book, I wrote about it in a slightly different context, but the context was building Republican and Democratic collaboration around our shared foreign policy abroad. And what I learned was when I got to Washington, I was very transactional. I was very steeped in data and facts. Indeed, and I come out of that same culture. And we said, gosh, if we just get smarter on something, we learn it more deeply, and then we convince people that our view is right because our math is better or our analytics are deeper or we've done more research on this than others have paid attention to it. And I learned the hard way that you don't get very far with that strategy in Washington. In fact, I testified about a budget that was going to cut the USAID budget, and I said 70,000 kids would die if we had to do that. It was a true statement. but it upset the Speaker of the House. I ended up having to go apologize to the Speaker of the House. He gave me a list of almost 40 very conservative Republican members to get to know. And he said, look, our faith is strong. We can support humanitarian global affairs, but not if you demonize us by showing us how smart you are, you know. And those weren't his exact words, but they pretty much would have been a politer way of saying what he said. And so I did that. And what I learned was, and indeed he mentioned Shiva, my wife, she actually came on some of these dinners. And after the first two, she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. But for me, I got to know people, some of whom I couldn't really connect with, and others, shockingly, we built a very strong relationship. And that relationship was not based on, do you like my foreign policy ideas? It was based on closing the door, holding hands, praying, understanding our faith traditions, understanding why someone might be involved in public service, and learning that a super conservative senator who was chairman of armed services adopted an Ethiopian girl, and even though he didn't believe in climate change and once brought a snowball onto the floor of the U.S. Congress to prove it was still cold outside, he was able to support our efforts because we walked on Ethiopian farms holding hands, and he talked to those farmers, and they're like, it's hotter and it's drier, and we're going hungry, and we need some help. And so I learned that those personal bonds, which had nothing to do with my spreadsheets and the data and whatever, like that ultimately drove success. And it also made my life richer and more rewarding, because even as he retired, I now know his kids, I know his grandkids, and my life is richer because I have friends who are way on the far end of the other end of the political spectrum. Not everyone there is a friend, but it's nice to have a few. And so I don't, that's why I call it Make It Personal. We get to do this stuff together. I mean, we are such good friends in part because Shivam and Ndidi were like the co-founders of the Social Enterprise Club at Harvard Business School, because they wanted people to care and make a difference. And those bonds are tight when they're founded in something deeper than just the transaction.
Fantastic. Thank you. Wow, I have so many hands up. I think we're going to have to take a few. Would you remember them?
Sure.
I'm going to ask my Emma, please come and sit here. We have a seat for you. I'm going to be partial because I sit on the board of Stanbic.
Excellent.
And that's Group MD. He just walked in. So we'll take 3 questions, please. Please keep them short, so we can get as many of them in as possible. So Amara, you go. Let me see who else raised their hand. Yes? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much. And hi, everyone. So I think my question is kind of actually just based off of what you just said about building relationships and how keeping it personal is the most important. And maybe it's because I go to school here, so I see it. But I feel like we have this opportunity, we have the money, we have the power to create change, and building those relationships are the best. But what is our focus? And I think one thing is like all those things about opportunity costs and also problems incurred. If we create a solution that we sort of see as what would help this country like fix its problems, could it create problems in the process? And how do we keep that in mind when we're doing things? That's like the first question. And the second question is just like based off of like we give money, we provide money, but do we solve the actual root problem and causes? When you were talking, I almost saw it like a tower where like we're stacking the tower, but like the Jenga blocks at the bottom are shaky. And so how do we ensure that we're like helping our countries? Like we're getting aid from the US, the UK, but how will we be able to thrive on our own without the support of I think that's the goal of like Nigeria thriving without the need of even having support. So how can we like focus on both? And then, sorry, one more thing. Everyone has different everyone has different priorities. So how do we focus on the main thing?
Don't stop her.
Sorry.
Don't stop her. Do not stop that young woman. Give her a round of applause.
Some more questions there, Raj. All right. So next.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ndidi. But young lady, you didn't tell us your name. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amara Uneli. I'm her daughter. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Chizom Alize, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of FITC, and that's Financial Institution Training Center. It's an entity owned by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, in what we do in FITC, we, as part of our work at FITC, we provide knowledge and digital learning solutions. We do a lot of talent advisory, but more importantly and very recently is the ESG Institute and ESG Advisory. And so I take this off the wonderful delivery. Raj, thank you so much for sharing. You said something about the public sector, private sector partnership. It may not be as great as we desire, but it's better to even have a relationship so we can always come back. But while that is also ideal, I would like to know how you think that we can make more sustainable progress where the private sector, and I say emphatically because my area of coverage is the financial service sector, which they've got the biggest fund, the biggest resources to support and intervene. But again, a lot of people are simply checking the boxes because they've got to report, because we would need to do social development, because we have a great relationship with Chiza, because we have a great relationship with CBN and Raji and Ndidi and all that. How do we drive scale? How do we drive growth? How do we build passion where there is a connection to the initiatives and to corporate values?
All right. And then another question. All right.
Hi, Raj. Thanks for the book. So I've got two quick questions. One's personal. The second deals with your professional life. The personal one is, why did you decide to write a book? And how did you find time in between flights, dining with, people in the Senate, etc., to actually sit down and write a good book? Second, I work for an African financial services firm with a footprint in 20 African countries. And I'm really keen to know how an organization like ourselves and others can partner with the Rockefeller Foundation on some of your initiatives across the continent. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. I can hear you. Just got to the how. Yeah. Good. I'm going to come to that and give you an answer to that question because I think it's important and it requires some real talk. So Amara, I just want to say on the first one, I learned over time you just got to give people the benefit of the doubt. If folks are working with good intentions, any leader making any decision has unintended consequences, and you want your leaders to be thoughtful about it. But you don't want to not do things because you don't know, because you can just never know everything. On your second question, I would just say you're exactly thinking the right thing. I mean, especially when you're young, you have the luxury of getting to choose what you work on. And you get to choose to work on the root causes of problems. And that's ultimately the most important thing. So take advantage of that when you can, because at some point, most of us have some constraints on what we get to do, right? and you're so smart and you're so talented, and there's just no question you're going to have a huge imprint on big and small problems, and you're going to have a lot of fun doing it. On the question on ESG, I think the sector, I mean, there's other leaders here that run financial institutions and I don't, but I think the sector needs to move from, as you said, checklist reporting and requirements of documenting impact to a mindset that says, hey, if I become one of the world's best climate investors, or if I understand labor law, social issues of equity, and understand that companies that treat their employees better tend to outperform over time, I can generate alpha, I can generate outsized value as an investor. It's when people have passion around that idea, that's when we'll make progress. I think the ESG sort of debate, at least in the United States, has stalled. It's become a point of political backlash. We now have the chief investment officers of the largest pension funds in Texas and Florida coming to our office saying, I want to learn with your CIO how to be a great climate investor, but I can't use the word climate. So I'll just listen in the back corner, you know, and I'm thrilled they're there and we need them on the path. But I do think we have to move off this mindset that it's about the checklist. And you said that. I think we can move faster than people think to the mindset that, hey, I can make money being good at this because this is the future. And I'm, you know, we see a lot of proof points for that as well. On the question related to writing the book, you know, it's interesting. When I first started the book, I wanted it to be a policy book. I wanted every chapter to be my thoughts on how to address hunger broadly, how to build public health systems that were resilient and protected against pandemics. And the publisher was like, no one's going to read that. You got to have personal stories and lessons for young people and this and that. And so it adapted a little bit, but you can still see some of my thinking on those policy technical issues. But it was a fun project. It required a lot more introspection than I appreciated it would. It took a lot longer to do. And we just sort of hustled to get as much of it done as we could over the years. And I have a great board that was very supportive of the project. So that's been great. And frankly, my favorite thing about doing the book tour has been sitting with young people like Amara. But Amara, you're a very fortunate young person. I've also sat with kids who don't have all those tools and experiences, and they are so motivated. You know, they're like, hey, I sat with these kids in a school called Harlem Village Academy, right near Columbia University in New York City, and all the kids were actually, half the kids were sort of African immigrant families, just come early, you know, they were first generation. And they were like, I want to be involved in these efforts. Like the passion to make positive change happen is so strong in those young kids that I just got so inspired that we can be actually successful. And on the very last question, you know, I think, and this is something Ndidi may want to speak to also, I don't remember all the details of the question, but the answer I wanted to answer, so I hope it matches, was when you do these types of things, when you make big bets, like our energy program, which I was talking about, in order to do it, I needed to go to my board and ask my board to allow us to, for the first time in 111 years, issue debt based on our endowment. We did that and raised $700 million. We then took $500 million and put it into one project. And like, that's a big bet. And you need a board that supports you to do that. You need a team that supports doing that. And what I learned was it's easier to do those things at times of crisis because, you know, it's a Haiti earthquake. Like people are literally dead in the streets and you're trying to save people that are trapped in rubble, and people have this motivation to do things differently. We did this action, you know, arguably not in the moment of crisis, but in a moment of strength. We knew that our endowment returned 9 or 10% a year for 50 years, and we knew we could get money at 2.4% basically for a 30-year bullet loan. And we did the math and we said this would work. And so the answer to your question that I wanted to say is, when you're not in a crisis, I think you have to build a group of people around you that are willing to be bold and willing to have big aspirations and not pleased with the status quo. Like Ndidi's my board member. Every single meeting, she's like, I want to see the percentage of grants that went directly to African institutions. And I and my team would be like, well, we granted to these folks, and then they sub-granted to that. And she's like, I don't want to hear about sub-grants. Like, and if I meet her requirements, she's just going to raise the bar. She's not going to be like, oh, now I'm happy. She's not. If you know her, she's going to say, okay, next time I want to see you do twice as much, and then twice. And that's what you got to surround yourself by, people who are just not going to settle for status quo and who want to make change happen at scale. And I will tell you, a friend of mine read the book and was like, Raj, this book is actually about institutional inertia and creating change in institutions where that's not often welcome or easy. I mean, you're creating change at an institution that was created kind of in the late 90s out of a different culture around what global development is, and you represent a whole different idea of where solutions are going to come from, where resources are going to come from, and who's going to lead the fight to rekindle African development. And you're going to have to make changes. And I know they're tough. And I mean, that's just part of leadership.
Thank you so much. We can't take any more questions, unfortunately, because some of you want your book signed, some of you want a photo up, and he has to make his flight tonight. So I want to just say thank you on behalf of my family, friends. I consider many people here family and friends, but I think many of us don't understand, the gifts that we've just gotten this evening. And I hope that you've been inspired and challenged. And please, the books that have been given to you, I assume they're gifts. Are they gifts? Wow, he's going to talk about that. But please thank William if they came out of his budget. Thank you, William. Thank you to the team. This book is a gift to us in Nigeria. As a Nigerian, when Raj said he was coming to Nigeria, actually it was William who first told me Raj was coming. I said, I will come. And at some point I called him, I said, I can't come. It's too stressful, But then I called back and I said, I will come. I'll make it happen. And why? Why did I come? Because I think this book is a gift to Nigeria. For those of you like me who have sent somebody to the market in the last 1 week and seen the prices double every week, Raj, literally every week. There are real consequences that we're facing of bad management and poor decisions. And what this book represents is a deliberate effort to think boldly, to be brave, to have courage, to surround yourself with mission-driven high achievers, to have humility when you have to change the course. But one thing that Raj represents to my generation, because we're the same generation, is courage and boldness. And I hope that he's infused that into this congregation. Amen? So that we're leaving here with a little bit more desire to be bold and courageous and to take the big bets required to see Nigeria on a trajectory. Because guess what? Our children, like Amara, and their children will hold us accountable for what we choose to do or not do at this time. And I hope that this gift that we've had and this small meal that we've shared with Raj today has given us a bit of a push to do more. So thank you, Raj. Thank you to the Rockefeller team. Thank you for giving us this gift, and we'll treasure it for a long time. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can I say one last thing before is that, Ndidi in this role at the One Campaign is such a big deal. It really is. And she needs all of us to just stand behind her, be loud, be proud, and be supportive as she really tries to rekindle a sense of global cooperation around support for Africa, and doing it with the mindset and the personality and leadership she represents. So here's to Ndidi.
Thank you. Thank you. Please give them a big round of applause. We'll take pictures at the end. We've got 2 more sets of remarks, and I just want to very quickly, first of all, a big round of applause for Ndidi and Raj. The last time I saw Ndidi in person was at IDA 21 Summit in Nairobi. And I say in person, but she was on stage with 21 heads of state. And she made a speech that was so inspiring. And it was really about how does Africa see itself? And why is this important right now? For me, I know everybody's got a favorite part or a line that they remember from the book, or a part from the book that they remember. Some have been quoted one. For me, it's that a big bet is a mindset. All right. So a mindset is available to everybody. It's not the exclusive ownership of, a group of people. Mindset is available to all of us. And Didi was talking that day about how we as Africans change about the way we think about ourselves, all of us. And so that's really, really important. And I think that was a wonderful conversation. And Didi, I know you've got many day jobs and you will have for a long time, but if ever there is a time you need one, I think hosting a TV show may be something. I think, Amara, you may want to, invite her to think about that as a career. So, look, we are going to try and just wind up here. We are tight for time, and I want to apologize to all those people who had questions. I really am sorry. It happens all the time when the conversation is elucidating. And I'll just say that, please, there are lots of resources about big bets. Like I talked about the internet, somebody made podcasts. You can find out. I'm sure that in one way or another, your question will be answered. So we've got two more sets of remarks. We're going to have a closing remarks by Professor Uchenna Uzo. And it's funny, I should say a story about Uchenna. I met Uchenna last weekend for the first time. Those of you who have cared to listen, I've been talking about how I used to live in Lagos 25 years ago. And I came here early to meet some of my friends, and from those days. And one of them introduced me to Uche, and it was to Uzo. And it's so good that I found him here. I didn't know he was coming to this event. We talked about it, and I didn't really know he was going to be here. So we're going to have him give us closing remarks, and then we're going to have a round of vote of thanks. And then let me just announce that at the end, when we're finished with the remarks, we're going to have a set of photographs here, which we will manage. And then those who would like their books signed, Raj will do that for you outside where we met for drinks. And that'll be an opportunity for you to sort of just say goodbye. And we hope that, we can do it, quickly, because Raj's got to leave for the airport. So with your cooperation, we can get all these things done in the next few minutes that we have. But I'll invite Professor Uchenna Uzo to come to the floor. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here. On behalf of Lagos Business School, I'd like to thank Raj. It's really, really touched and inspired listening to you. Not just because of your message, but also because of your person, the passion, the interest. You are walking your talk. And I think there's no better way to make a change, to make a big bet, than being the best version of yourself. I think the mindset is important, but I also think the person is important. I love what was said about the care economy. And I think the best form of care we can give is being the best version of ourselves and trying to do ordinary things extraordinarily well. And so as I sit here and reflect, I'm hoping that we all can be willing to take bigger bets after today's presentation. And one good way of making a big bet is to inspire someone else to make a big bet. And so I call on you to reflect on that. I'm also very happy to see many women in the room, women in leadership. I'm not a prophet, but I want to prophesy that the real change we're hoping to see in Nigeria will come from the women in this room. And so please, let's do that. So thank you indeed as well. So impressive to see how you're in different continents at different times. I pray you continue to have good health, energy, passion for what you do. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Have a nice day.
Yeah, being powerful and making a short speech are skills that everybody needs to learn. And thank you, Prof, for those amazing words. So our last remarks are a vote of thanks. And, this was a job I was given in the last minute, so do excuse my momentary lapses, as I want to make sure that I pronounce the names right. So our last speaker is a vote of thanks from Dr. Blessing Ayemhere. I hope I pronounced that right. Is Dr. Blessing here? Okay, you'll take it. Thank you. Please do introduce yourself and do give us a vote of thanks, and then we'll go straight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, Dr. Blessing is unavoidably absent. So my name is Mrs. Hetty Ugbo. I'm the treasurer of Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria. So I'm here to give the vote of thanks. And on behalf of the Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and Lagos Business School, I extend a hearty thanks to our chief guest, Professor Raj Shah. Thank you so very much for sparing some time from your busy schedule to visit Nigeria and give us the talk. Today we have the opportunity to hear your thoughts in the book, and I personally took away so many things. Didi summarized it when she talked about courage and boldness. And I actually put up my hand to ask a question, but I know we're pressed for time. But you said something about imposter syndrome. And you gave an example about how you walked into the room and you heard the vice president then talking about whether you have the capacity to do the work. My question then would have been, how did you cope? Or what were your coping mechanisms to handle imposter syndrome? Because that would have been something useful for everyone to hear, but it is what it is. So I know that we have all been energized, and you have actually encouraged us to take large steps and make changes. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank Ndidi, our great moderator. Thank you so much. You do this so effortlessly, and I think it's such a great gift, and it's an inspiration to us all. Thank you very much, Ndidi. To all the participants here today, thank you. I know that without you, this wouldn't have happened, and this wouldn't have turned out the way it has turned out. To all the organizers, again, thank you very much. Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria, Lagos Business School, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Nigerian Economic Summit. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the leadership of the four organizations so that we can have some photographs with Professor Raj. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please give a round of applause. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for representing so well. So we're going to have a set of photographs now, and we're going to start with Raj and Didi, and then the rest of the team that you mentioned will join. No, I think let's just have them here very quickly, and then in a few minutes, I'll let everybody else go. So quickly, can we just take the pictures? Please, can the representatives of the four hosting institutions be ready as well? All right, perfect, perfect. So please join, please join, please join. All right, let's please meet outside for the book signing. If you could just line up quickly so that we can finish. Thank you. Yeah, that was good. That was very well.